we're going to transition now to our community panel. I find this to be one of the most meaningful parts of our day, and it's the other notion of expertise. I'm going to introduce Nancy Alar, who's the president of the Autism Society of South Central Wisconsin. She's going to be moderating the community panel. Nancy, I'll let you take it over, but I just invite our community panelists to turn on their screens and their cameras and unmute. And thank them deeply on behalf of the Wasteman Center and everyone gathered here for being willing to share your firsthand lived expertise and experiences.
Hello, everybody. And I'd like to thank our previous presenters, Jen and Sarah, for their being able to put so much information in such a short period of time. And I hope we can do the same. As Teresa mentioned, I'm currently president of the Autism Society of South Central Wisconsin. I'm also the parent of a 43-year-old autistic man. And I'm interested in some of these issues that have been mentioned for adults. Now, we have a set of prepared questions that I'm going to be asking our panelists, and I really thank Chris and Emily and Signe and Evan for coming today and being willing to share what's going on with their life. But first thing I'm going to do is ask the panelists to introduce themselves and share whatever information they would like with the audience. We're going to start with Signe, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Good morning, Nancy. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Signe. It's really close. We have two children, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, both diagnosed with autism. So we are new members of this community navigating. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Signe. Emily, can you share with us what's going on with you besides all those dinosaurs behind you?
Yes, as you can tell, it is a significant interest. So thank you so much for having me today. I have 3 children on the spectrum. My daughter, who is 6, my middle child, my other daughter, who's 4, and my youngest child, my son, who's 2, all have an autism diagnosis.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
I had enough trouble dealing with one. Having 3 sounds overwhelming. I'm so glad you're smiling. Evan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Evan. I'm an individual on the autism spectrum. I'm currently finishing up my last, 28 credits at UW-Whitewater, where I major in journalism with a minor in electronic media. I have a degree in photography from Madison College as well. And that's pretty much it. I work at UW-Whitewater Athletics and do freelancing here and there for photography and videography.
Thanks, Evan. And Chris, can you introduce yourself for us?
Certainly. My name is Chris. I am an adult on the autism spectrum. I am currently looking to get into a career in web design, and I'm glad to be talking today.
Great. I wanted to just add that I think autistic individuals are extremely interesting and have a lot to contribute. I like to describe my son as gloriously autistic because he is. And even with some of the challenges presented by his autism, he became the first person that they know of to ever graduate and get a 4-year degree from the UW-Madison. And so I'm very proud of him. And I'm sure all the rest of you are proud of your own accomplishments and your children. So we're going to start out with some questions that we have today. And I will call on you individually to respond to the questions. If you don't want to respond or have nothing to add, you can say pass. So we're really looking to just hear what your comments and thoughts are. There's no right or wrong answers. We're just really interested to get your feedback so we can help, excuse me, in the interest of understanding. So first question is, how did you find out that you or your child or children were on the autism spectrum? Chris, I'm going to start with you. How did you find out?
Well, I'll try to truncate this as best I can. I was actually first diagnosed with, back then it was Asperger's at the Weizmann Center. They weren't the first to notice, but that was the first time. I knew I had whatever Asperger's was when I was probably around like 10 years old, because I had teacher's assistants kind of helping me out throughout elementary school. But really, I didn't really understand how being on the spectrum really affected my worldview and colored my behaviors and interactions with people until about my mid-20s. I had a really great psychiatrist. At the time I was dealing with other mental health issues, who helped kind of contextualize some of the things I was feeling. And it kind of set up a light bulb in my head, like, oh, you know, this is the reason why some of these things aren't making sense to me, or why I'm having difficulty with some of these things. So the short answer is I knew by around age 10, but it only really clicked for me when I was like maybe 24, 25.
Thanks, Chris. And Evan, can you react to that?
Someone's popular. All right. I guess, well, I know I was diagnosed around 8 years old. My mom just told me at some point in my life. I never really made much of it until I was like a teenager, or I started to understand it more when I got into high school, because that's when I started to interact more with other students, because, you know, K-12 students are, you know, really brutal, especially back in the 2000s and, you know, 90s. All these students at UW-Whitewater right now are making like such a fuss of, you know, what they think the 90s was about, when they have no clue what it was like for even me. Literal nightmares, like, you know, my version of what a Freddy Krueger movie would be.
Thanks for your comments, Evan. Emily, can you explain how you found out your children were on the autism spectrum?
Sure. So we had always known my first was a little bit higher needs, but she was our first. We were naive parents. We didn't really know what to expect. So we put a lot of it down to just personality. And we went for 4K roundup. And so they separated the kids and the parents to observe the kids, and then to give the parents some information. And I immediately got a phone call back that said, hey, we need to see Haley once more for another evaluation. There were some concerning red flags that we saw, and they wanted to make sure that when they put her in the class, they had enough resources for her. So we signed up to bring her back, but then the pandemic hit. And so that was canceled. Yes. But luckily we had just switched insurance, and by some miracle, we managed to get a phenomenal pediatrician who actually had personalized experience with ADHD and autism. And so when we went in for our well child visit, I brought up a couple concerns, and I had mentioned the 4K roundup problem. And she spent 2 hours with us at that visit, observing her and asking little detailed questions like, does she require specific clothes? Do her clothes have to be, you know, long sleeve versus short sleeve? Or does she need specific laundry detergent, or textures with foods? Very little things, you know. And so she sent us for a full neuropsych evaluation. And she did show up as both autistic and ADHD. And we were told, you know, because we had multiple children, to watch the others, as when you have one child with autism, your subsequent children have a higher likelihood of having it. And so when we saw the minor signs in my middle, we brought up those concerns with her as well, and she immediately sent her for an evaluation as well. And when she came up as autistic, they told us in that meeting that basically our third was almost guaranteed to have it. When you have one, the risk for the subsequent children goes up, but when you have two children on the spectrum, your risk is exponentially higher for any subsequent children. And sure enough, when he turned about 18 months, we noticed some signs. And so all it took was a My Chart message of, hey, we're starting to see some signs, and they put in an evaluation for him as well. And he had autism as well, it turns out. So yes, so it was relatively easy.
Thanks, Emily. You were lucky
Thank
to get
you.
that pediatrician. Signia,
Yes, we were.
how did you find out that your child was on the autism spectrum?
Similar to Emily, our son had some of the noticeable hallmarks. So around 18 months or so, we were able to see a speech pathologist because the concern was, well, he wasn't speaking at all. So not even making babbling sounds. So at the 12-month appointment, you go to your well check appointments, and it turned out, pediatrician said, well, he may be a late bloomer, so just wait it out. Bring him back when he's 18 months, and then we'll talk about it some more. Sure enough, we did that, no change. So he recommended a speech pathologist to, I guess, do a speech evaluation. And during that evaluation, she said, this isn't a speech issue, this is an autism issue. I really recommend you to get a formal diagnosis. And that happened. But what was more interesting was at that time, his older sister was experiencing, or at least expressing herself with some echolalia, and she had some receptive language delay. And I'm sorry, they've decided to join our meeting. I see that. And in our 3K, we went to 3K, and it was her teacher that said, I really apologize. They were quiet this whole.
Maybe it would be better to move on to someone else at this point so you can deal with your friends.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move on to a different question. And we have such little time left that I just want to remind everybody to keep their answers as short and as meaningful as possible. First of all, I'm going to ask Emily, as a parent or family members, what behaviors do you find challenging about those on the spectrum, and how do you handle it?
So with 3 on the spectrum, I would say 2 have a more significant need for restrictive behaviors. They have to have things their way when they want it. And if it isn't their way, it needs to be redone. And communication issues as well. So ours are all verbal, but sometimes that there's a big breakdown in communication. And so for those 2, we just pack in extra time, we deal with the meltdowns, we walk it backwards, and we fix the problem. We use a lot of visual aids, and that has helped significantly. And for my older daughter, I would say the nearest and dearest issue to my heart is that she doesn't have the reciprocity that others do. And so it's harder to make a bond with her, or a deeper, stronger bond. And it's not that I don't love her. I love her deeply. I would do anything for her, but that bond just comes harder. And so we've just had to update our expectations. For her, a bonding activity may look like counting to 1,000 together and coloring instead of, I guess, doing an experience or something like that. But getting on her level, I think, and meeting her where she's at right now has definitely made an impact and helped there.
Thanks, Emily. And now I have a question for Evan. As someone on the spectrum, what behaviors do you find challenging about people who are not on the spectrum? And how do you handle those?
All right. Well, for everyone out there, don't take it as me as being rude, but I really hate it when things get changed at the last second without any prior notice, and or people show up blatantly late and they give no notice of when they're going to be coming from, or when they're going to be coming, because that changes a lot of my plans. It creates a lot of anxiety for me. I guess my anxiety can be a problem for others, looking introspectively within myself on what I create for others, because I know my anxiety can be a bit of a problem too. So
Okay, thanks, Evan. I'd like to move on to Signy now. And the same question I asked Emily. As a parent or family member, what behaviors do you find challenging about those on the spectrum, and how do you handle it?
We're still learning. So what I'll say is, just to echo Emily's answer, the restrictiveness, but also having those spaces of opportunities to connect with peers, because it can be challenging navigating in a social setting with a child that has higher needs. And there's expectations that they won't fulfill. I'm not sure if they're capable yet, but they won't fulfill it as it stands today.
Thank you, Signy. And then I'm going to ask Chris the same thing I asked Evan. As someone on the spectrum, what behaviors do you find challenging about people who are not on the spectrum? And how do you handle it?
Truthfully, I thought a lot about this and I couldn't really come up with much. I will echo Evan's sentiment that if people are changing things at the last minute, that really bothers me. Just a general lack of communication too. I mean, that's more relegated to work things, but other than that, I really couldn't think of anything that stood out to me.
Oh, okay, thanks. That's also an interesting perspective. I would like, what?
Typical dishonesty. Good one, Jay.
Okay, this question is for all four panelists. Who or what provides you with support in your life? And we're going to ask Signy first.
We have a very supportive family, albeit that they are on the East Coast. My husband and I, we're here alone. We don't have any family in the area. So we have very supportive family virtually, and then we have very supportive friends, very supportive services. So it's been challenging, but we're making it.
Cool. Glad to hear that. So Emily, same question. Who or what provides you with support in your life?
We are actually similar. We have family all on the East Coast. But unfortunately, they don't really believe in our children's diagnoses because they are high functioning. So they can mask a little bit better. But I have found that children's long-term support has been incredibly helpful. They always have resources. They're always happy to help in any way that they can. They've provided us with resources for therapies, as well as physical things that help us with our day-to-day and coping strategies as well. And they have been very instrumental, as well as a huge team of doctors. We have been really lucky in finding the doctors that we have, and they're incredibly supportive of anything that they can help with.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you.
And I would like to ask the same question of Chris and Evan. Chris, why don't you start? And who or what provides you with support in your life?
Similar to the previous answer, I have two amazing, loving, wonderful parents that have fought for me hard as a child and continue to fight for me as an adult. I've had a good number of psychiatrists that have helped me along the way as well. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Autism Society of South Central Wisconsin that came into my viewpoint recently, and they've helped me a little bit as well.
Thanks, Chris. And Evan, who or what provides you with support in your life?
Well, my dad and my mom, obviously, but I'd also have to give a huge shout out to the good people in the communications department at UW-Whitewater, where like under my professors and my instructors over there, and then my supervisor at UW-Whitewater Athletics, Chris Lindeke. They give me way more than I bargained for. When it comes to my education, understanding the world around me, they help me grow to become the best version of myself I can be. I really do think that UW-Whitewater has given me the tools to be successful after school, as much as I fear, what may or may not happen after I'm done with that place. It's been an amazing ride there. And they give me a lot of support, both emotionally and intellectually. They stimulate my mind in so many ways I cannot even start to imagine or start to, just where to begin, really. We have a lot of long discussions during office hours that go longer than it should.
Thanks, Evan. We are now past 10:30, and because of the time limitations and because we started a little bit late, we're going to, I'm going to ask them a couple more questions. And I see I am looking at the chat and I see there are some questions, but I would hope that Teresa could pick some out for me because I can't follow them very, very easily. The question I have is just for Chris and Evan. It's question number 12. Have you had any experience with dating? And if so, how did it go? So Evan, can you share with us briefly what's happened in that area for you?
God, I hate dating. It's filled with so many, it's like trying to throw a dime in a shot glass from like 20 feet away. You're more than likely not going to find one that's exactly your type, and concessions are going to have to be made. But I'm not going to give up my core values of what I want in a relationship, because it's just and that's where I kind of have to reevaluate if it's really worth it for me, because my career right now and my education right now is worth more to me than a relationship. And personally, I'm not really all about kids really at this point, nor do I want it, because, well, to put it simply, as much as I love being on the spectrum, having the chances of having one that has a more severe version of autism that wouldn't be able to, live life fulfillingly the way I lived it, I can't live with myself to create something that won't be able to, see and feel and experience the world the way I have seen everything. And that just suck. And I'd feel like a failed parent at that point. That's why I get into so many, that's why I just don't want to, date at this point, I guess, now.
Okay, thanks, Evan. Chris, can you react to that question about, have you had any experience with dating? And if so, how did it go?
Okay, there we go. Yeah, certainly. I'll echo a little bit of what Evan said as well. to get straight to the point, I'm a 30-year-old man and I haven't had a date in my life. Part of it is just because it's so like intimidating. But the other reason too is like right now I really need to get my foot in the door for this new career that I'm starting. And that's kind of taking up most of my focus. Now I did have an incident where I thought somebody was hitting on me. And we had a, well, truthfully, we had a really nice talk. It was a really great, meaningful conversation, and it was resolved very amicably. And to this day, that girl and her boyfriend are like my best friends, and we're still really tight. So I would like to think that if something like that happened in the future, I could handle it with a bit more maturity now than I would say if I was in high school. But the short version is no, I haven't had any real experience with dating.
Thanks for sharing that, guys. I have one last question that I would like to ask, and then I'm going to see if Teresa has picked any other questions for the panelists. The question I'd like to ask all of you is, describe some of the sensory issues you have encountered and dealt with. And I'm going to start with Emily and briefly describe what you have seen for sensory issues.
I would say our biggest one is food sensitivities. The textures or even the colors are restrictive, like an M&M yogurt has to have blue. But we see everything from things are too bright, things are too loud. The type of clothes, they're all very particular there. It has to be washed with a specific detergent and fabric softener, so it has a specific scent. And they have to be tight, like leggings. They can't be jeans. They have to be sleeve and long pants throughout the year instead of appropriate weather clothes for the summer. For the winter, that's great. I would just say things like that mostly, but across the board, I think we've pretty much seen a lot of it. No wet or dirty either. Even just like a minimal speck will bother them. Things like that, I would say.
Thanks, Emily. Signa, what kind of sensory issues have you encountered with your family?
I echo everything Emily and what Emily said, and just add self-injurious behaviors for the sensory inputs. That has been the most prominent challenge that we deal with, and we try redirection. We try, giving up some sort of commands, or setting something else up to try to fulfill that sensory need. But it always comes back to those injurious behaviors.
Thank you, Signa. Evan, what is the most significant sensory issues you have dealt with?
Okay, you're probably gonna laugh at me for this one, but it's the fluorescent lights. God, that's like my kryptonite. It's like such a pain in the it throws off my concentration for the whole event, or for the whole class, and I end up having to stare at it. Like LED lights on an iPad are so much easier to stare at for hours on end, even though it probably will give me like brain damage or cancer at some point, God forbid. Or just, overall, I really hate fluorescent lights, and I wish that they'd just do away with the whole thing. That's been the one thing I hated the most.
Thanks, Evan.
Get rid of them from all the schools and buildings. I'd be doing us all a favor.
Chris, what kind of sensory issues have been most significant for you?
First of all, I'll say that the fluorescent lights thing isn't silly at all. I could easily see how that would be irritating to some people. As for me personally, it comes down to two major things. Number one is heat. I will literally lose my mind and my ability to rationally think about things if the temperature is like above 75-ish, that's kind of my upper limit. And that goes for work, that goes for outdoors. It's a little different if I'm working out, but you know, especially in a work comfort environment, I can't function if it gets too hot. The second thing is I'm very sensitive to physical textures. For example, I can't stand wearing latex gloves. I had a former employer that required them. This wasn't a medical position, so this wasn't like a life or death sort of thing. But they required gloves at some point, and I had to get a note from my doctor because I would just stop functioning if I had to wear these gloves because I felt so bad on my hands. On a similar note, I can't really use hand sanitizer unless I have those wet wipes because the sanitizer just gets so dry and makes my palms feel so dry. If I get really desperate, to this day, I'll still like lick my palms if I feel like they're too dry.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing that. Now I'd like to have Teresa see if she has some particular questions for the panel she would like to bring up.
No, I'm going to say that what's been going on in the chat is a lot of support and appreciation for the answers and the willingness to be so open with your experiences. So there's a lot of support and love coming from the chat for all of you and what you're sharing. And a lot of people can echo some of the experiences that you shared. So Nancy, there aren't any specific questions. Some of the questions that are coming up, Tim Markle from the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs has been responding to some of those. So there's some good resources. And then Kirsten also from the Autism Society put in information about how you can connect to the Autism Society to be involved in all the good work that you're doing there and some of the supports and resources provided. So no specific questions at this point. So if there are more questions, Nancy, that you want to touch on from your list, I'd say go with that.
Okay, because we're over time, feel free to leave if you want to disconnect from our Zoom session, but I will ask just a couple more questions to see if we can get some responses here. I really appreciate the sensory responses, especially because it's that kind of stuff that I remember being so amazed by, but when you hear it over and over and over again, you really believe it. So I think that was very important to share. Okay, one more question here. What situations cause you anxiety and how do you cope? Let's go with Signe first.
Thank you, Nancy. I think the most concerning issue that I have is, you know, my family, we are Black. So the expectations and standards are different for people of color in this country. You have to be well behaved, you have to be available, you have to be respectful, and all of that is coming from a white middle class lens. So I am concerned that my children will have some experiences that I will not be able to shield them from. Right now, I guess I'm just in survival preparation mode. Let's just get you to a place where you will not get hurt physically to your, or, unfortunately, you can die because of some of the interactions you can have in a social situation that you may not understand. So that means, rules, that means education, that means anything that I can do and my husband can do to prepare the child for the world that they are existing in and how they may not be able to enjoy some of those freedoms and experiences that come so naturally to their counterparts. That seems to be my greatest concern because both of the children are taller than their counterparts, more muscular, and they can be viewed as dangerous when they get to a certain age. It seems like K through 5, I'm learning, has really supportive parent structure and teacher structure, partnerships with the school district, more resources. And then as the child grows, those things seem to diminish. which means that if the child is not at a particular social, educational, emotional standpoint or space, and they don't have those same resources or contacts, they're kind of left on their own. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about high school, very much so. I'm concerned about college. I'm concerned, how do they make that transition to adulthood, knowing that they live in a construct that's hostile towards them?
I think you should get them into a group organization of some sort. Like there's this group that I used to be a part of. I've left it since because I just don't have the obligations I just can't commit myself to it anymore. But look into the Wisconsin Timberwolves special hockey team. They are almost 100% autistic across the board on all functioning levels. And it'll be a great community for you in addition to the Autism Society, and it'll give them an outlet. It's kind of like the Discovery Zone of today, essentially. And they do have grants where they help and get support where you can get like the gear for free for hockey. And this is, mind you, the kids will love it. It'll give them exercise. It'll give them a community. They'll make friends. I've made plenty of people that have impacted my life in more ways. The coaches are having a deep understanding of autism. They have coaches with they have Edgewood High School students that volunteer. So you should take a look into that if you're looking for an outlet for your kids too, because it'll help. I've seen just changes in some of the more severe cases of autism to where some of the kids have become more outgoing and more interacting with more of the others players and learning how to pass, share, and all that other stuff that we're trying to teach them on the outside. There's a lot of takeaways that hockey can give you.
Okay, thanks, Evan, for that infomercial.
Sorry on that part.
Thank you.
That's okay, but he is absolutely right. I have seen this team, and they do provide a lot of socialization, especially for people who want to learn the skill of skating and everything like that. So thank you for adding those comments. So I'm going to move now to Emily.
I just gonna pause for a second and say, Signy, make sure that you look at the comment section, the chat section. There's a lot of love for you there, and you hit on some important points. So make sure you read those comments.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and Signy, I really also appreciate you bringing up those types of issues from your culture, because it's something we all need to be more aware of, just like we want other people to be aware of autism related issues. Emily, what situations cause you anxiety and how do you cope?
For us, it is going out in public, but it's because mine are known to run or to not be aware of their surroundings and just wander. They're thinking they're following us, but my husband and I, but really they're following strangers. And the tantrums, the older the kids get, the more it's looked at as like, control your child, what's wrong with your family kind of thing. And it's not so much that the judgment really doesn't bother me too much, but when people step in and make comments, and like it is a little bit of the what else is going to happen kind of thing, like how is this going to go when they get older. And so for us, it has been using adaptive aids. We've gotten 2 children's long-term support strollers that are meant for children that are older, so that we can contain them a little bit and not have that same worry. And adapting our expectations. When they have meltdowns, we just have to leave right away instead of, hanging it out. There are places that we found that are easier for children. The Milwaukee County Zoo, they have made adaptations for autistic children. If you stop at the desk, they have sensory pouches that they'll pass out with headphones and visual aids for the kids. They have quiet spots marked on their maps for places to calm down. And so practicing at places like those that are inclusive has been really helpful, so that when we go someplace that maybe isn't quite as inclusive, we've at least had that little bit of practice. But I would say, yeah, going out in public is just, it's a hard one.
Thanks, Emily. Chris, what the heck things cause you anxiety and how do you deal with it?
I still have some anxiety about being in public just because there's that kind of social awkwardness factor. You're not really sure what to say or if you should say anything at all. That said, I've gained a lot of really useful DBT and CBT skills. I'm assuming people in here know what that means.
I think you probably should explain briefly because I don't think everybody does.
Okay, DBT is dialectical behavior therapy and CBT is cognitive behavior therapy. They're basically just a general term for a set of skills that kind of tackle anxiety and I guess depression as well in different ways. I'm not really qualified to go into much more detail than that, but they include things like box breathing and mindfulness. So if those terms are familiar to you, that's kind of what I'm referring to. But anyways, the long story short is I've gained a lot of these skills over the years and they've kind of helped me cope. And a lot of my anxieties, I guess, have been kind of whittled down just through my life experiences. Truthfully, my big anxiety right now is just to do with going into a new career. It doesn't really have much to do with being on the spectrum.
Thanks, Chris. And finally, Evan, what kind of things cause you anxiety and how do you deal with it?
Trying to, I guess right now, the anxiety is just trying to fit in a world that isn't, normally isn't really made for people like me. And I'm trying to adapt into their world, essentially, especially since journalism and communication degrees are not exactly fitted for people with autism. I'm just using that degree to kind of shore up any flaws or any weaknesses, I guess, to put it better. Like with my writing and communication and public speaking, I guess that would help. And it's like I've been taking all those courses and it's helped me a bit more. And I just I applied for a New York Times photography fellowship and I'm still like in the running apparently, and I'm kind of shocked. But I also am a little more concerned, like this could be huge because I know that they're looking for more disabled people with disabilities to represent their newsrooms. I did like a panel on the newsroom of disability in the newsroom a few months back with the National Press Photographers Association. And that was a hot discussion on, why aren't newsrooms representing people with disabilities more? And I kind of want to be part of the answer to that because I feel that that could be something that my purpose in life, I guess, per se.
I think you do a good job at that, Evan. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's now 5 minutes to 11, and I think we're going to have to cut this off. Unfortunately, it's been really helpful. So I'd like to turn it back to Teresa Palumbo for closing comments.
Again, everyone, both our presenters and our panelists, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. Nancy, as always, I mean this when I say you set the bar for moderation of a panel, so thank you for all of your work. Just a reminder to everyone who's joined us today that all of the talks will be available. The session today was recorded, so we will have archives of the presentation and then we'll send the PowerPoints out. Everything will be on the Day with the Experts website. I'll send an email that'll provide some of those information and those resources. Again, I encourage you to connect with the Autism Society of South Central Wisconsin for more information on what's happening locally. And then also, if you have any questions or need resources, to please check out the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs, or contact the Weissman Center. We would love to be of service to you as well. And hopefully you can join us here once again next January for the 19th annual Autism Day with the Experts. So thank you, everyone.
And thank the panel also from me so much for you being willing to volunteer and share your very interesting and helpful information.
Thanks.